Hello everyone, you're welcome to my channel. This is Word for Word Talk. I hope you're having a wonderful Sunday. Today, I just want to bring it to your notice that France is having their final general election, where in this election, the far right is seeking majority. So we want to see what happened to the Prime Minister Macron, if he's still going to be there or is going to have less of a seat in his cabinet. So let's get in. Let's see what happens. So the closing shortly, and then the result is going to be out. So join us as we watch France general election results. Thank you. Please don't forget to like, share, click notification button so when we're on, you will be notified. It's so awesome, good to be able to connect and know what's happening around us and around the world. Thank you.
If the party will win enough seats to take control of the French National Assembly. So tonight, as the results come in, we don't yet know who will be in charge of France coming tomorrow morning. Well, let's go first to our Europe correspondent, Adam Parsons, who's at the National Rally's headquarters in Paris. And Adam, they're gathering there to wait for these results, the first exit poll results to come out. But what's the mood like there at the moment?
Yeah, let me tell you, the mood is not good here among the supporters of the Rassemblement National, because the first exit poll has come out and it is sensational. After a week of us talking about a possible victory for this party, potentially the first far-right party to lead the French government since the Second World War, the estimations are that they have been beaten into third place, that the coalition of the left and the centre, who decided to withdraw candidates simply to thwart Marine Le Pen, has worked. The exit poll that we have in front of us suggests that far from it being the RN, it is in fact the left-wing coalition, the new Popular Front, that is predicted to get between 175 and 205 seats. They predicted to win, but then, remarkably, second place is predicted to go to the Ensemble coalition. That is President Macron's centrist grouping, who are predicted to get between 150 and 175 seats. This, remember, just 7 days after Macron's party had an absolute nightmare in the first round when they were pushed into third place. The RN predicted to get 150 to 150. And so even if this poll is optimistic, the most optimistic prediction for the RN, 150 seats, would still be fewer than the most pessimistic prediction they're making for Ensemble and for the new Popular Front. This is, I have to say, an absolute shock after these days of discussion about the rise of the far right, about what was seen as the intoxicating power of Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella. And what has happened here, I think absolutely for sure, is that in the intervening time, there have been enough people across France who have decided that they want to vote simply to thwart these people, the far right Rassemblement National, the far left and the centrist groups, who at times have expressed loathing for each other, have worked in concert in a couple of hundred constituencies more, that they have removed candidates so that all of that support can coalesce effectively as an anti-RN vote, and it seems as if it has paid off. Now, what I would say right now is this doesn't mean that we know what is going to happen, what France is going to look like tomorrow, because clearly from those figures we don't have a party that has anywhere near an absolute majority. It would, if these figures are right, there is, I suppose, a chance that Ensemble might have done really well and could end up as the biggest party, in which case, frankly, we carry on as we were before, and Emmanuel Macron will regard this as the most extraordinarily successful gamble. If it isn't that way, if the left-wing coalition turns out to be the biggest, then he will have to follow custom and approach them and ask for them to nominate somebody to be Prime Minister. We don't know who that will be. We don't know if they would go along with that. We don't know what the mechanics are that lie ahead of us. I have to say, we've already heard real booing here. I think there is a sense of creeping shock among these people who gathered for a celebration. This is, of course, an exit poll. Exit polls can be wrong. The one in the United Kingdom was very, very accurate. But at the moment, what this exit poll is telling us is that the seismic shock that had been so widely predicted of a far-right party taking possibly an overall majority, if not being the biggest party in the French Parliament, has not come to pass, and that actually the Rassemblement National have been punched down into third place.
Quite an extraordinary sort of early outcome that you're talking about there, Adam, and the opposite of what we've been hearing all week, especially after that first set of results came out last Sunday, and especially given, as you say, they were gathered there to celebrate, and what we're seeing at the moment is something very, very different. After, frankly, for weeks we were hearing that the far right were at the gates of power.
Yeah, exactly right. You just heard more booing there. I mean, I think there is a sense that is creeping into these people. On the other side of the room, they brought champagne into this meeting. These people thought they were on the cusp of history. The Rassemblement National, I don't think expected tonight to get an overall majority. They did expect to be the biggest party in Parliament. They've been hearing that for the past week. But what happened was this, what's called a Republican front, where the left and the centre came together. Now that, on the face of it, sounds like it might be straightforward. It is hard sometimes to overestimate the dislike between Emmanuel Macron, the president, the centrist president, and Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the leader.
Adam, I'm going to interrupt you.
Group there.
Yeah, Adam, let's just hear from Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who's speaking at the moment. Let's have a listen.
He's threatened, but now they can be reassured because they have won.
Avec ces bulletins de vote,
So, with these votes, the majority has made another choice for the country. The desire of the peoples from now on has got to be strictly respected, and from now on there should be no kind of arrangement, a subterfuge which would be acceptable. And, in fact, the lessons are without appeal. The defeat of the President of the Republic and his coalition has been very clearly confirmed. The President has got to accept and recognize this defeat without trying to overcome it in any way whatsoever. And the Prime Minister has to leave. And in fact, he never had the trust of the National Assembly, and he's in fact directed the campaign which has been lost by his camp, and in fact the peoples have voted against him. The President has got the power, the President has got the responsibility to ask for the new Popular Front to govern. And we are ready to do so. The new Popular Front will respect the mandate that these votes have given as far as the candidates are concerned, and we will keep to our words. We will apply our programme, the whole of our policy. And everything is included. We won't dissociate various parties, nor in fact receipts, expenses, nor various measures that will be introduced. And from this summer, the measures that we have envisaged will be taken by decree without voting, and the abrogation of retirement at 64 years old. blocking prices, increasing minimum wage, having salary negotiations according to the various professions, managing water, and also moratorium on major useless works. We already said last week, and this is something that we're confirming to the President of the Republic, we refuse to come into negotiations with his party in order to try to have agreements, especially after having fought tirelessly for the past 7 years his policy of treating people badly socially and ecologically, not taking the situation into consideration. And especially, we want to make sure that the polls are taken into consideration. Especially, we want to make sure that despite any kind of knocks that we've received, any kind of defamation that we've had, and any kind of insult, we still have overcome, and we've won. And from now on, the votes have been obvious. And the new Popular Front is ready to govern, and after all, it's the only alternative which is coherent, which has got a very organized program, very detailed program, and the elements on the left are united and have shown that they were able to deal with this extraordinary historical situation, and in its way, it's been able to avoid what was going to happen. Once again, it saved the Republic. We saved the Republic. And once again, we can begin to work on ecological matters, social matters, and our people, our time, our world, our Europe need. So, dear friends, men and women, comrades, throughout the country, we're waiting with fear and emotion for this moment, and we were able to go against all kinds of prognosis, thanks to your commitment, thanks to your loyalty, thanks to your faith, and so when the poet sings to the sun that covers France, there's something in the air which has ensured this transparency and this taste of happiness.
You were listening there to Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the leader of the La France Insoumise group in the National Assembly. And he is also currently the voice of the French Leftist Alliance. And in a shock election win, the French left have reversed things for Marine Le Pen's National Rally Party. So instead of seeing Jordan Bardella on stage at the National Rally headquarters, popping corks of champagne and celebrating, instead we've seen leaders of the French Leftist Alliance there giving a speech. You heard there from Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who said, "We have saved France." In the last week, we were seeing, after the results of the first round of this election, that the far right were leading. Well, that turned and changed today. We saw voter turnout was extremely high. A couple of hours ago, we were told at 60%. And as the exit poll results came out, a shock here in France with that leftist alliance seen to, at this stage, beating the far right. Let's just have a look at those exit poll results. We can now bring those results to you from our partner news broadcaster in France, BFM TV. Now, the exit poll suggests a hung parliament and that the left-wing coalition led by Jean-Luc Mélenchon has come first with a projected 175 to 200 seats. President Macron's centrist ensemble has come second with 150 to 175 seats. And despite winning the first round, Marine Le Pen's national rally has come third with a projected 115 to 150 seats. Let's go back to our Europe correspondent, Adam Parsons, who joins us at the National Rally's headquarters in Paris. And Adam, I mean, clearly a subdued mood there. When we last spoke, you talked about the champagne bottles at the headquarters there. We've just heard from Jean-Luc Mélenchon, and perhaps even he wasn't expecting this kind of shock result.
No, I mean, you say subdued. It's way beyond that. This is a stunned party. This is a gathering of people who thought this evening would finish probably not with the absolute majority they might have hoped for a week ago. They certainly thought they were going to be the biggest party in Parliament. The discussion here was about how do you leverage that? Do you accept the job of Prime Minister? Do you not? How do you make your presence felt as the biggest party? Well, guess what? That has gone up in flames tonight. Jean-Luc Mélenchon was just showed his entire speech here. I think that gives you a measure of the sense of shock. He was booed as he appeared on screen, but nobody thought to turn off Jean-Luc Mélenchon. So here he was addressing MPs, activists, the workers from his bitter opponents, the Rassemblement National. Just to sum up what Jean-Luc Mélenchon said, he said, we want to govern. He said that he was ready to take over the leadership of the country, and he called on Gabriel Attal, the present French Prime Minister, to resign. Now, we didn't hear any more flesh on the bone yet. We don't know who they're going to nominate as Prime Minister. He did say that he would not enter into talks with Emmanuel Macron to form a coalition. So I guess that means he's prepared to lead a minority government, which is going to be fearsomely difficult in this country because it's like a Mexican shooting party. This one is that the left and the centre and the right and even the centre-right, the centre-left, these are parties with long-standing grievances against each other and will try to trip each other up rather than help, I suspect, in any form of coalition. So tomorrow's story will be about where does France go from here? How on earth does France put together some kind of cohesive government? But right now, it is about that sense of seismic shock that this party is feeling, having put itself on the cusp of becoming the first far-right party since the Second World War to lead France, to be the next, the biggest success in this European wave of populism that has had such an impact on European politics, north, south, east and west. This was seen, I think, by many populists across Europe as being the crowning triumph on its way, and it has fallen flat. If these polls, and remember they are just exit polls at the moment, are to be believed, the Rassemblement National will be the third biggest party in Parliament, beaten by the left-wing coalition, but also, remarkably, by Emmanuel Macron's centrist Ensemble coalition. And just a thought on that. I was there in Brussels after the European election when Emmanuel Macron called this election. And to be blunt, people thought he was ludicrously ill-advised. They thought he'd acted hastily. They thought he hadn't thought this through. Everyone knew that his idea was to call the bluff of the far right. He thought that France would mobilise when they saw the danger, if that's how you see it, if they saw the possibility of the RN taking control of the country, that they would move against him. Many people thought he was wrong. The pollsters thought he was wrong. And tonight I suspect that in the Elysee, Emmanuel Macron is sitting there thinking, I told you.
Indeed, and Adam, we will continue to talk about how this potential left alliance will be formed. As you say, these are results based on the exit polls, and we'll know more. And then how that will work with Emmanuel Macron's party and how tricky that could potentially be. But for now, thank you so much. Let's go to our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, who's also in Paris for us. And Dom, this is a shock result. We were expecting to be going to the RN's headquarters for their celebrations. Instead, we heard there from Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who has said, we saved France, and talked a little bit about his program there. But you're on the streets of Paris. Just tell us about what people are saying where you are and how they're responding.
Yeah, so we heard from the left-wing leader, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, but this is where his supporters, but the supporters of all those other left-wing parties and other more centrist parties have been gathering through the afternoon, expecting the opposite of what's happening. And the mood here is the polar opposite of what Adam is experiencing there in the RN. What was they were hoping to be a celebration, and now it's turning into a bit of a wake if these exit polls turn out to be correct. As those exit polls were announced, the mood here turned from one of what was foreboding, really, to one of, I think, surprise and then celebration. I'll just show you the scene here now. This is La Place République, which is where people come, French people come to express their concerns, their resentments, their feelings in the wake of terrorist attacks, in the wake of political events, in the wake of seismic changes electorally. So they had come here expecting the worst, I think many of them, because of the surprise success of the far-right party in the first round of this election, the National Rally, and they adorned the monument there with their banners, a kind of quilt work of a patchwork French tricolor, the banner of the NFP, that is the new Popular Front party that seems to have won so far in these exit polls, and we've seen flares going off, and as you can hear, Yalda, the mood is one of celebration, people cheering, singing, and it's a total transformation in literally 20 minutes or so. Let's talk to one of the people celebrating tonight so far. Yvonne, what is your response? Now, these are exit polls, so we don't know the final result, but the indication so far, a big surprise, that the coalition that you support appears to be well ahead in the second round of the parliamentary elections.
Sorry, I didn't hear your question.
What is your response to what you're hearing in the exit polls tonight?
My response?
Yeah.
I'm so glad because as I'm gay, I am black, I am born from another country, I'm an actor, and I'm so glad that the racism has been beaten. And we felt that it was too dangerous. The climax here in France, the President week was too dangerous for some people like me, but for all the people from my family, from my friends. And I'm so glad that we have won a small win, but we have won some things.
Tell us about the emotional roller coaster you've been on today. Did you expect RN to beat everyone else in the polls so far?
I thought it would beat the other party, but I wasn't sure.
You thought the far right party would win?
I thought the far right would win, but I wasn't sure. So I'm glad that they didn't win, but it's not really so strong that it was pretended to be, but I'm glad that they didn't win.
And had they won, had Jordan Bardella's party and Marine Le Pen's party won, what would that have meant for you personally? What would that have done to you? And if they turn out still to win tonight, these are exit polls, so who knows what will happen.
If they won,
are moving in your way, but if they do win and things don't look like they're moving in their way, what would happen? What would that mean for your life?
Well, for my life, in France we have intermittence, which is a French special regime, and thank God it won't disappear. But with the RN, it would have been disappeared.
What are you going to do tonight? You going to celebrate?
I'm gonna do some party, but small party, because I'm gonna go to my parents' home tomorrow, and I'm gonna have my holidays, thankfully.
Were you losing faith in France, and does this restore your confidence in your country?
I was a little bit losing faith, but no, it's going to be better for me, from all my friends, and from all my families.
Yvonne, thank you very much.
Thank you too.
Thank you. And as you can hear, I'm sure, Yada, from the crowd behind me, there is a mood of exultation at the moment. I think it's probably still cautious because these are exit poll figures, of course, and there could be such a thing as the French equivalent of a shy Tory voter. People coming out of these polls may have, if they were voting RN for Bardella and Marine Le Pen, they may not have been prepared to admit it. But certainly on the face of these exit polls, a total upset after that upset at the beginning of these parliamentary elections, now moving completely in the other direction, a dramatic change. And I think the question for these people who are from a disparate coalition of groups, centrists and also very much on the left of French politics, is how will this play out in terms of the hung parliament? How will the French President Emmanuel Macron now deal with what appears to be very different mathematics to what came before these parliamentary elections and to what he and many others had expected and feared? So a lot of questions very early on still in the evening, but certainly from where I'm standing, a very changed mood, and on the the left of French politics, people very much celebrating so far the prospect, they hope, of ultimate victory in this parliamentary second round of elections.
Yeah, Dom, as you say, reverse of what we were expecting. We will be continuing to talk to you throughout the programme. Thank you so much. Well, joining us now is Dominique Moisy, Special Advisor at the public policy think tank, the Institute Montagny. Thank you so much, Dominique, for joining us here on the programme. What a result. I mean, although when you look at your pieces and the things you've been saying and writing throughout the week, you were almost predicting that this may happen.
Yes. I think the first round of the legislative election was a referendum against Macron. The second round tonight has been a referendum against the National Rally, the extreme right. If you want to summarize in one sentence, you would say that fear of the unknown has prevailed over hatred of the president. And I don't think it comes as such a surprise. We are a few weeks away from the commemoration of the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and the French were going to hand over power to the long distant inheritors of the Vichy regime, of those who collaborated with the oppressor. That would not have been possible emotionally. I think the French have memories. To see Bardella or Marine Le Pen be in charge of lighting up the flame to the memorial of the resistance in Mont Valérien was simply too much.
And that's what I want to talk to you about, the historical memory of people here and their sentiment towards the far right, actually. They moved today, they mobilized, and something clearly shifted. But it's also a warning shot to Macron, isn't it?
Definitely. In some ways, the irony of it all is that we all thought a week ago that the president was ending power to the extreme right. In fact, we may very well have a center-left government in the coming days or in the coming weeks.
Macron as well. It's not like that will be easy.
Well, there is a new balance of power now between the president, the top of the executive power. In fact, our president has the symbolic power of the king and the real power of the prime minister. But next week, on both realms, he will be diminished. The parliament is hung, very divided, but there's more parliamentary power in France, potentially, as a result of, I think Macron behaved in 2024 as David Cameron did in 2016. He took a huge, unnecessary risk at the cost of his power, of his country, and above all, of Europe.
Has it paid off, though, in some way?
I don't think so. He prevented the worst to occur. But we have a very divided France, very polarized France. This will leave traces. The extreme right will feel betrayed. There's something wrong. We were at the door of power last week, and now we already come number 3. How come this has happened? Something went wrong.
Do you think they'll feel like it was stolen from them?
Some will definitely believe it, though it's absolutely wrong. It was not stolen from them. What happened is that in the middle of the week, they announced who their government would be. And the French realized that it was a bunch of amateur, incompetent, or extremists, or both. And they didn't want to give their fate to this group of people. They said to themselves, well, I don't like the president, but I want something else. And the left reacted very strongly when they saw the possibility that the extreme right would come to power.
So Macron clearly thought the far right, was more dangerous for
Yes.
France and its future and its position in Europe and the world. But what kind of far left are we going to see in this country too?
Well, that is the problem. The left is very divided. The far right was very united behind Le Pen and Bardella. In the case of the left, there is Mélenchon, whom you quoted. He may appear as the key figure, but he's rejected by at least half of the left, who consider him an extremist, a dictator, whatever. And so there is the possibility that a coalition of the moderate can be formed behind a key centrist, center-left figure, and Macron...
We just, Dominique, have Jordan Bardella on
Yes,
stage
please.
at the National Rally headquarters. Let's have a listen in.
No longer take advantage of our party. In the first round, we had 34%. This evening, these electoral agreements means that we're thrown into the extreme left, into the arms of Jean-Luc Mélenchon. And in the first round, we were certainly at the head, and we were able to double the number of MPs. And in many, in fact, constituencies in France, we had 45%. Taking into consideration the policy that's going to be applied in the next month, and won't respond to any kind of concerns of the French people. So, considering the policy is going to be applied in the next few months and will not take into consideration any of the concerns of the French people, we incarnate more than ever the only other possibility in comparison to the party tonight, Philippe Poutou and Edouard Philippe. I say this tonight, I'm saying this tonight with extreme seriousness, to deprive millions of French people of the possibility of seeing their ideas will never be a viable destiny for France. So this evening, by trying to paralyze our institutions, Emmanuel Macron has not only pushed the country towards uncertainty and instability, he deprives for many months the French people of any kind of response to their daily difficulty, even full crisis of purchasing power. Even though lack of security and disorder is hitting the country, France is deprived of a majority and of a government to act and to be able to, not to be able to help France. Today we've understood that, in fact, these electoral arrangements, which have been orchestrated from the Élysée, from a president who's isolated, an incendiary extreme left, won't lead the country anywhere. To create a single party, the question all our compatriots are asking, the following question: what are they going to do? I know how many millions of French people must be frustrated, and I know their expectations. So I would like to say to them that over the past few months, hope had arisen, and no longer, and this hope will always exist. So this evening, everything is beginning. The National Rally is going to amplify its work at the National Assembly with Marine Le Pen, and we're going to ensure national union, and we're going to gather together all the French people and also other democratic possibilities at the European Parliament. In the end, our MPs will play their role within a major group that will in fact refuse migratory submersion, punitive ecology, and confiscation of our sovereignty, because after all, the National Rally is different to others. It will not go into any kind of political compromise. So today, as tomorrow, it'll be at the side of the French people and ready to take on its responsibilities. We don't want to have power just for the sake of power. We want to have power in order to be able to give it to the French people and to restore the sovereignty of the nation, and to be able to make sure that France gets out of its problems. To all French people, I would like to tell you that my intention, in fact, is stronger than ever. I will be there. I will be there for you, with you, right until the victory. So this evening, it's just a beginning. An old world has fallen, and nothing can stop a people that has begun to happen. Long live France, and long live the Republic.
was Jordan Bardella. Jordan Bardella speaking there at the National Rally HQ, saying that I will be here with you until we reach victory. But no doubt, shock, stunned, and really a sense of surprise at this result. We're listening there to our Adam Parsons, who's at the headquarters there, telling us that they had champagne bottles. There was a sense of jubilation and celebration, which suddenly turned to upset, and the celebrations turned into some kind of wake. So lots of different types of moods across France today at this result. Let's bring in Dominique Moisy, who's here with me at the moment. I mean, I guess Jordan Bardella wasn't expecting to give that kind of speech tonight.
No. In the last few days, he realized it would be difficult for him to reach Matignon, the seat of the Prime Minister office, but he could not envisage such a fall from grace, coming number 3 after dreaming of being number 1 for a long period of time. But in fact, what strikes me as an historian, so to speak, is that in 2016, the British opened the way to populism. After voting Brexit, the American voted Trump in. And if you look at the results of the second round of elections, you could say that the British are opening the way for France in the best possible scenario by giving power to the extreme center and by returning to rationality and moderation after a strange 8 years. Will the French follow the British path? This is my deep wish, but I don't know, I'm not sure. The situation is going to be confused. As you said, there will be a hung parliament, there will be strong negotiations. It's clear now that the battle will first take place within the left itself, with Mélenchon saying, well, we won, I'm the natural leader, open the door of Matignon to me, which Macron will not open and which the majority of the left will not want him to reach.
Dominique Moisy, really fascinating talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. Well, let's go back to the National Rally headquarters and speak to Adam, who was just listening there live to Jordan Bardella for us. And Adam, as we were talking here with Dominique Moisy, it was not the speech he was expecting to give tonight.
No, it really wasn't. And he came here earlier than expected. And got a big ovation, got a big cheer as he came in, big cheer as he came out. But and as he left, he gave the big Vive la France. But this was a speech laced with frustration, anger, and disappointment. If I can summarise it, his opinion is we were stitched up, we were denied the victory that we rightly should have had, but we have shown our strength and I'm not going anywhere. So that is the message that Jordan Bardella, I think, wants France to take from this, is that this is not, in his eyes, the end of the story, that this is the RN showing what it is capable of, but also he wants to raise the spectre that the political establishment has done for them. And this is a playbook, of course, that we have seen very often in America, in Europe and beyond, by far-right parties, by populist leaders who are blessed with the eloquence of people like Mr. Bardella, who in defeat say, well, you, the people, wanted us, but there were establishment plots to keep us out. Now, where that slightly falls out is that he is referring to Jean-Luc Mélenchon effectively as the establishment, a far-left leader. As he leaves here, Jordan Bardella, he is still, I think, the golden boy of this party. But what we now have, as you have been talking about, is a massive questions about where France goes now. And there are simply no clear answers tonight.
Indeed, as you say, a lot of uncertainty tonight despite those shock results. Thank you so much for now, Adam. Let's bring in Agnès Poiré, French journalist and political commentator. Agnès, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. It is a shock result, and we've been talking about it for the last half an hour or so as the exit polls came in, although my other commentator has been saying that, look, we started to see things shift midweek, and the RN didn't think they would get the result they did, but certainly not the sort of numbers that they're seeing tonight.
Yes, the Republican front has, for the fourth time for my generation, stopped the path to power for the Le Pen party, whether it's the father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, or the daughter, Marine Le Pen. It's quite extraordinary because I didn't think the Republican front would hold so well. And in many ways, it's very strange to look at the figures. I mean, we don't have the definite numbers of seats, but the left and hard left alliance will probably come first, then the presidential majority, and then quite far away, the Le Pen's party. And it's a relief, but then, hard things are going to start as soon as tonight or in a couple of hours once we have absorbed that relief and the shock, which we didn't expect. Because really, we'll have to admit that President Macron's gamble sort of paid off in many ways, because Dominique Moïse told you just a few minutes ago that he had done a sort of David Cameron in 2016 with Brexit, but Brexit didn't happen in France tonight, if you see what I mean. So he did take a gamble. It's certainly not the majority he would like to have, because he's losing about, 50 seats. And the left is gaining around 40 seats, perhaps 50. And the far right is also gaining about 40 seats. But it's, he asked the French to take responsibility, and they did. They did. And this is the beauty of the second round. This is the beauty of, 2 rounds elections, if you compare it with Britain, for instance, is that, there's the first round, and then we regroup during the second round, especially if the far right threatens to reach power. And then there is what we call the Republican front, when there's tactical voting. And this is the result we got tonight. But hard things are going to start tomorrow because, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, whom we heard first tonight after the results, is the hard left candidate, is pro-Putin. His party has been, resorting to the vilest anti-Semitism since the Dreyfus affair in France. And there is no way Republicans or Democrats can actually ask Jean-Luc Mélenchon to be the next prime minister. So we'll see whether President Macron can actually build a broad-based coalition, which is not a French thing. We're not the Germans, we're not the Italians. We don't do broad-based coalitions, but we'll see whether everyone from the left, the moderate left, or the Republican left and the Republican right, and of course the center, sort of come together in a unity government and serve, the people. Because for a year we're stuck with that National Assembly. We're stuck. So says the Constitution. The president cannot dissolve before another year. So we have a hung parliament, which is really not a very sustainable.
It has a lot of complications in itself. France may have stopped the far right from taking power, but we're not quite sure the makeup of this leftist alliance either. We don't know as yet. We're basing everything on exit poll results, aren't we?
No, completely. And we might actually have tomorrow wake up with actually 3 blocks that are almost of, equivalent force. So this is really a question of all the Republicans, all the Democrats coming together in a coalition. But of course, then there is President Macron. What is he going to do? He showed that he could be quite abrupt in his decisions 4 weeks ago, he said he wouldn't dissolve, and he didn't sleep on the results of the European election, and straight away, quite abruptly, we hadn't known him to be so abrupt, decided that he had had enough, basically, and that France was not possible to govern.
Indeed, I mean, a dramatic few weeks and then a dramatic result tonight. Agnes Poiré, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. Well, let's speak now to Sir Peter Westmacott, former UK ambassador to France. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for joining us here on the programme. I mean, it has been, as I was saying there to Agnes Poiré, a dramatic few weeks, and then there was this sense that the far right were going to, take control, take power. They were at the gates of power, and then this dramatic twist at the 11th hour where France has spoken and they have historical memory of the far right. But this coalition could also pose its own set of problems, not just for Europe, but France's position globally.
Well, I think you're right, Yelda. We're all going to be kept guessing for a while. France is a wonderful country and has yet again surprised us all with the outcome. In one sense, I think what President Macron was trying to do with his gamble of calling the early election was to make the country more governable, because he didn't have a majority of his own party in the National Assembly. He had to use presidential powers. There were times when it made him unpopular, and he was held responsible for doing things which he would rather not have been entirely the president's responsibility. So here was a moment to try and do something to change that, but also to address the problem of the dramatic rise of the far right in the European elections. We all remember that one of the reasons we ended up with Brexit in the United Kingdom was because the Conservative Party in the UK was deeply alarmed by the rise of the UK Independence Party in European elections and felt that it then had to address the problem, because otherwise the far right was going to take over the Conservative Party. And that's one of the reasons why we ended up with the commitment to a referendum. Now, I think in the case of President Macron, this was a move perhaps to call the bluff of the right by saying, well, you can score very highly in the European elections, but in the ones that really matter, the national ones, you're not going to do so well, so we can cut you down to size. That didn't work out. We saw in round one that the far right did much better than expected. But you can argue that he did achieve part of his objective, because in this extraordinary process of a couple of hundred of candidates standing down from both the middle, the ensemble party of him, of Macron, and the coalition formed by the Nouveau Front Populaire, you ended up with those two coming together, not at all likely bedfellows, in a process which pushed back the National Front, the Rassemblement National, to third place. So in a sense, he's kept the far right out of power, having in the first round seen his bluff, if you like, backfire. Where does that leave us for now? I don't know. When I was in France and you had cohabitation, in other words, of a government in the National Assembly of a different party to the French president, you had one party, which was led by Lionel Jospin, and you had President Chirac from the right in the Élysée. But now you haven't got a single party. No party will have the majority. Not clear who the prime minister will be. The rest of the left coalition will not have Jean-Luc Mélenchon, and I'm sure the president won't either. So it's going to be complicated. It won't be even a normal cohabitation, and cohabitation at the best of times is complicated. So, where does that leave us? I don't think any of us has any answers at the moment. The idea, I think, was to make France more governable. I'm not too sure that the president has achieved that objective tonight.
No, I think you're right. I mean, the idea was, perhaps stop the far right, but also put France in a position where it is more governable. And now we have a new set of complications. And these complications come at a time where the war in Ukraine rages on, for example. And France has an extraordinarily important position when it comes to leading the EU alongside Germany. And then, of course, the concerns around China, the upcoming US elections. And so, the question is, how destabilized will France be, and the impact that will have on its position in both Europe and globally?
Well, I think you raise a really important question. Of course, we need to remember, those of us in the UK, that it is the President, not the Prime Minister of the National Assembly, who have responsibility for national defence, for foreign policy and for European policy. So there are significant powers that remain with the President, and he's made pretty clear he's not going anywhere. So he will be the arbiter of French policy on all those issues. But nevertheless, if there is a problem in terms of the relationship between the institutions of French democracy, the National Assembly on the one hand and the Presidency of the Republic on the other, and if there is a strong sense of resentment from the far right that they feel they've been somehow cheated out of their victory, then I think France does become a slightly more difficult and potentially unstable partner. But it is a really important moment. President Macron has played a significant leadership role in galvanizing NATO's support in defense of Ukraine against the Russian invasion. So is the United Kingdom. Well, UK and France, even though we're outside the EU, we're very much in NATO. When we've got the meeting of the European Political Committee coming up at Blenheim Palace soon, which will bring the European leaders and wider afield, leaders from further afield together, we really do have to work together in the cause of, sounds cheesy, but nevertheless, defending the values that we all hold dear and ensuring that Western democracy is in reasonable shape. So it is not at all a moment when the rest of us can afford to have France, a critical European partner, the other main player in Europe in defense with the United Kingdom, the only other nuclear armed power along with the United Kingdom in Europe. It's not at all a moment where we want to have France, if you like, not playing its full part in international proceedings.
Indeed, but I guess on the other hand, what it does symbolize, I guess, is that France has historical memory, and this is France mobilizing against having a far-right government, and had that happened, it would have been the first time since the Second World War. So for at least now, I guess this country and the rest of Europe can take a deep sigh of relief for many who are concerned about the sorts of policies that Marine Le Pen, although her party has repackaged itself, those tendencies many believed were still there.
Yeah, you're right. There's a tradition in France of if you like, coming together to see off the risk from the far right or fascist tendencies. They did it in 1936 when the National Front, I think, first came into existence. I remember that President Chirac won a second term, having only won 19% in the first round, because everybody, if you like, held their nose and voted for him, even though they weren't from his own party, in order to ensure that the National Front, led by Marine Le Pen's father, did not come to power. So yes, this is the way in which, if you like, the institutions of French democracy can rally round to ensure that things don't go off the edge into a ditch. But I think there are important question marks. This is not going to be, as I was saying, a normal cohabitation. There may be some resentment around amongst those on the right who feel they've been denied that opportunity. And I think the president's position, having called this election in order to make, I think, France rather more governable, is going to be a bit more criticised, if not vulnerable, because he doesn't have to go anywhere until the next presidential elections take place 5 years after he was re-elected. So I think, yes, you could breathe a sigh of relief, but we do need answers to a lot of questions which are not at all apparent at the moment as to what is going to be the political direction that France follows in the coming weeks and months.
Indeed, big questions. Sir Peter Westmacott, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme.
Pleasure.
Well, joining us now, thank you. Well, joining us now is Charles Kupchan, a former senior director of European affairs at the US National Security Council during the Obama administration. Thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. I mean, tonight, France is a country perhaps in a state of shock. Some would be taking a sigh of relief. Others are mourning. There are thousands of people out on the streets of Paris at the moment, and what was going to turn into perhaps riots has now turned into celebrations. But with you where you are, how are you viewing these results?
Well, I think the view from Washington is one of relief in two respects. One is there was real concern here about the National Rally winning a majority and a far-right government taking control of the National Assembly, and that would send a very bad message about trend lines in our democratic societies as we here in the United States head into our own November election. And secondly, the national rally has ties to Russia. We don't know whether the Bardella would have pushed for a change in policy toward Ukraine. But I think the view from Washington is we're unlikely to see any big changes in foreign policy as a result of this election in France. And as a consequence, steady as she goes. That's important with the NATO summit about to open here in Washington in a few days. On the other hand, I would say there is cause for concern in the sense that one of the trend lines that this election demonstrates is the center is weakening. The far left and the far right in France have done well. We saw that in the recent European Parliament elections. Here in the United States, the center has been weakened over the last decade or so as more and more working Americans find it difficult to make ends meet. So I think what we're seeing here is not so much that the far right has been rejected, but these are anti-incumbency moments. The far left and the center engaged in strategic voting. They withdrew their candidates as a way of preventing the far right from gaining a majority in the parliament. But this is chapter 2 of many chapters to come. The key question is, where are we heading when it comes to democracy here in the United States and in continental Europe? Will the center hold? No one can answer that question as of today.
Yeah, at a time when, you know, the world is engaged, and certainly the West is engaged in major conflict in Ukraine, for example, and big questions that are being asked. But we're really grateful for your time here on the program, Charles Kupchan. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, a lot of uncertainty tonight. We saw those shock results this evening about an hour ago at 8 p.m. when those polls closed. The first exit poll results came in, and we were told that instead of the far right reaching some form of majority, although not an outright majority, we've now seen the far left gaining most of the seats. So the situation has reversed. We were expecting riots on the streets. We still don't know how that will unravel, but we are following all the developments here on Sky News. So do stay with us. Lots more coming up in the next few minutes here on Sky News. We'll leave you with these images. It's 8 o'clock. This is the Sky News French election special program live from Paris. Celebrations in Paris as the exit polls suggest the far right has failed to win this country's parliamentary election. It's a blow to Marine Le Pen's National Rally Party, which is now predicted to come third. A hastily assembled coalition of the left appear to be the likely winners. Centre-right leader Emmanuel Macron comes second as his gamble of calling the snap election backfires. We're live here in Paris throughout the evening as we receive the results, which will reverberate across Europe. Good evening from Paris. I'm Yalda Hakim. A shock here tonight as the exit polls predict that the far-right National Rally Party has failed to win the French parliamentary election. They had won the first round of voting and were widely predicted to win tonight. But let's show you what the exit polls now suggests will happen. Have a look at this. The exit polls suggest a hung parliament, but that the left-wing coalition led by Jean-Luc Mélenchon has come first with a projected 175 to 205 seats. President Macron's centrist ensemble has come second with 150 to 175 seats. And despite winning the first round, Marine Le Pen's National Rally has come third with a projected 115 to 150. Our Europe correspondent Adam Parsons is at the National Rally's headquarters in Paris. Adam, quite a mood shift there tonight. Earlier, we heard from Jordan Bardella. It was a somber speech, not the kind of victory speech that we thought we would hear.
No, it's been a pretty extraordinary evening for the Rassemblement National, whose supporters thought they were going to come here tonight, probably not to see a party take overall majority, but at least to see their party be the biggest in the new parliament, to be the dominant force, to be the party that was being talked about, to have Jordan Bardella discussing whether or not he would be Prime Minister. And it has all gone wrong for them. The air has gone out of the balloon here at the National Rally. Jordan Bardella's speech mixed anger and disappointment, accusations, and also a recognition that what beat the National Rally was a concerted effort by the opponents to effectively thwart him and Marine Le Pen, to stop the National Rally rather than necessarily seizing victory for themselves. And that is frankly borne out by the polls, which have shown a big difference between the first round of this election a week ago and what we're seeing now. And that is that the biggest party is projected to be a left-wing alliance, which includes communists, socialists, and a party called France Insoumise, led by Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the veteran left-wing campaigner, socialist leader. And he has already said that he wants to take power. Now, a couple of things about that. First of all, you might wonder, what does Jean-Luc Mélenchon stand for? Well, he stands for higher taxes, for wealth taxes, increased public spending, repealing President Macron's very unpopular move to raise the retirement age. Jean-Luc Mélenchon in the past has also expressed scepticism about France's position in NATO, although he's backtracked on that. Now, that said, this is a coalition. It's not just about Jean-Luc Mélenchon, and the other parties in that coalition, frankly, don't like him for all of his success. They do not want him to be Prime Minister, but they have yet to coalesce around somebody else who can do that job. And Mélenchon has, over the past month, frankly, sort of flip-flopped about saying at one time, if they don't want me to be Prime Minister, I won't go for it. Other times saying that he would make himself available. It's going to be very hard now to see who takes over that pivotal role of Prime Minister. It's in the gift of the President, Emmanuel Macron, to give that. He offers it by custom to the biggest party in Parliament, and that would be that left-wing group. But there is a world in which those polls are slightly wrong, that the left-wing New Popular Front doesn't do as well as projected, the second party does better, and that is his own coalition. It would be extraordinary if Emmanuel Macron's centrist coalition turned out to be the biggest party in this parliament, as they are at the moment. But these projections do allow for that. What they don't allow for, if they're right, is for the Rassemblement National to become the biggest party. I think it is clear, listening to Bardella as well, that they have already accepted that they've lost, with Bardella basically saying this is anti-democratic for all the other parties to gang up against them. Where France goes next is very, very difficult to predict. The present Prime Minister is Gabriel Attal, the youthful protégé of Emmanuel Macron. Remember, it was Macron who called these elections after his party's dismal showing in the European elections. I think pretty much everybody thought that was a mistake, except the president himself. And today there will be those in the Elysée, those his supporters, who said this is what he planned all along. He wanted to expose the RN, the far-right party, to the greatest scrutiny. And he wanted them to do well in the first round and then to lead to this pincer movement of uniting political parties, disparate parties, against them. Now, the next stage you might think, well, what about a coalition? I think we need to be realistic. Jean-Luc Mélenchon loads Emmanuel Macron. Emmanuel Macron loads Marine Le Pen. Mélenchon and Le Pen load each other. French politics is full of people who can't stand the sight of each other. Coalitions are going to be very, very hard to create. So we may be heading into an era of minority government led by the left, an incredibly fragile government because they will be opposed at every turn. You would think there would be a mechanism for deciding this, and there isn't. You talk to people across here, across France, at the moment they say they don't know what's going to happen, but they think they know what's been averted. And that is that France, a week ago, looked like it was going to have its first far-right government since the Second World War. That now looks vanishingly unlikely.
Yeah, Adam, I'm just going to read to you what Jean-Luc Mélenchon actually said. He said, our people have clearly rejected the worst-case scenario. The Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal, has to go. The New Popular Front is ready to govern. So, you know, a sense there, as you say, all of these people hate each other. How on earth are they going to come together and deal with this fractured country and fractured society? Because this last week, while they've managed to stop the far right from gaining power, just shows how divided France is today.
Yeah, I don't think they are going to come together. I think that's the simple answer, Elder, is that Jean-Luc Mélenchon cannot lead his own grouping with any unanimity. The idea that he's going to reach out and form a coalition with Macron, who loads him, is one for the birds. I think it's hard to see, for all of his rhetoric tonight, and for all the fact that his party is the largest, it's really hard to see how Jean-Luc Mélenchon can emerge as the Prime Minister. Because, for instance, some months ago, his comments about Israel and Gaza expressed here in France caused such anger that was when his other party leaders in the New Popular Front basically almost disowned him. What is holding this grouping together is effectively some kind of kinetic energy. They know that they are politically more successful if they're together, but it is a truly loveless marriage. And a poll has shown that actually the French public also don't want Jean-Luc Mélenchon as leader. They would rather have somebody from the French Socialist Party. So I think the most likely outcome from that is that a putative Prime Minister from that grouping will come from negotiations within the group. But remember, that Prime Minister will, if the polls are right, lead a grouping that has maybe 200 seats for them, which means that the best part of 400 MPs are not allied with them. That is not so much a fragile position of leadership as an absolutely precipitous one. And in France, I think there is a kind of consternation, a shrug, like, what on earth do we do now? Because it's not used to this. This is not a country particularly used to any kind of coalition government. And at the moment, we just don't seem to have the grounds for forming coalitions. It is a time of absolute political instability, and that I think will worry financial markets, it will worry other European governments, it will worry NATO, it will worry G7. Macron, of course, is up to the Washington summit in NATO later this week. This is one of the most influential countries in the world, and at the moment it lacks leadership.
Yeah, indeed. Adam, thank you so much for now for all of your analysis there. Let's go straight to our Dominique Waghorn, who is, well, out on the streets of Paris, Dom, and we're expecting to see riots on the streets. We don't know, it's still early days, but something like 30,000 riot police were deployed across this country, 5,000 of them around the suburbs of Paris, and yet the mood has shifted here tonight.
Well, Gauda was just making way there for a trolley of beers, of lagers to get past, because this place has turned into a party and they're preparing to celebrate, I think, through the night. And what a change of the mood here. An hour ago, up until an hour ago, the sense of foreboding was palpable in the air here in the Place de la République, a place where the French come to celebrate, but also in times of tension and national concern. And I say that the mood was one of anxiety, being patrolled by a lot of police, and I think they were preparing for trouble, as we saw in the wake of the victory of the far right in the first round of this parliamentary election. And then it just turned on a centime, the mood here. It shifted to one of surprise euphoria, and we've had chants, singing, people dancing. I'll show you the monument behind us, adorned with a patchwork quilt tricolor, the colours of the French national colours, but also of Palestine. Actually, a lot of supporters here are Palestinians, and that red banner there is the popular front, banner as well. You can see there the coalition of parties. It seems so far, according to exit polls, police prevailed very surprisingly in the second round of the parliamentary elections. Let's talk to two people who've paused their celebrating and waited very patiently to give us their reaction. Marceau, first of all, what was your reaction when you heard the news from the exit poll?
Well, the thing that we heard the noise on the street first. We heard some celebration screams in the street, and we were just like so happy because we didn't expect it. And I think it's a really great call for hope for the whole country, and that's why we're here to celebrate. We've been protesting for a while now, and now it's just the time to celebrate after all the protesting.
Are you a Mélenchon supporter, a communist supporter? What would you describe yourself as?
No, I think NFP, like the global union, more than a character, more than an individual.
Ellen, you were dancing until we pulled you out of the crowd, so your mood appears to be one of celebration and euphoria. What went through your mind and your heart when you heard the news that things seem to have swung around in this election?
So first, there was a huge relief because, as Marceau, I was manifesting almost every day here in Republic Place, and so yeah, when I see everyone cheering and so grateful, I'm like, okay, we won this battle, but it's half of a relief because it's not like absolute majority, so we need to keep fighting.
How worried were you by the way things were going in this parliamentary election?
Super worried. Like all the minority in the country were very like how do you say that?
I think many rights we're going to have like less freedom in terms of everything. I think the RN had some poor ideas for many minorities, as anything.
So what does Macron do though now? Because he has a different set of mathematics in the parliament to deal with. If these polls are borne out through the evening, is he going to be able to form a cohabitation, do you think, with the left-wing coalition that seems to be prevailing in this election so far?
Well, I'm not sure if he has choice. He has to work with this. He doesn't have the majority, and actually all the previous elections he only won because of extreme far-right party. So he never clearly won the elections. It was never about him. So finally we get to have a counter-power, which is like left-wing, and yeah, we're super happy about that.
So that's the direction you want France to go in? Are you confident it's going in that direction now?
I really hope. It's never 100%, but the results show a good direction, right?
So how are you guys going to celebrate? What's your mood going to be? What's the mood here? Describe to people in Britain what the feeling is here tonight in Paris.
I mean, I'm shaking, I'm smiling, I'm dancing, I'm yelling. All my friends are here.
I think just having everyone in the same mood is a great thing. And it just seemed like we're not one person in our apartments, we're just a big group celebrating a common victory, and it's a big hope for youth and for France at all. So good.
And Ellen, thank you so much. We'll let you get back to your celebrating. Yeah, so the mood is one of exaltation, of euphoria, very different to what it was until just over an hour ago. It's an outcome which we've been hearing from a number of pundits already tonight. Yalda is a typically French outcome, things changing very dramatically. And I think the feeling won't just be one of relief here in the left-wing side of things in French politics, but also across Europe and possibly across the rest of the Western world. There was a real sense of fear, I think, about the prospect of a far-right party taking over the government of France and having to find some kind of cohabitation with Emmanuel Macron. There was a fear that he had been completely destroyed by what had happened in the European elections, on where these elections were heading. The markets tanked in reaction to the first round of these parliamentary elections. We'll see how they respond next. But there are a huge amount of questions, a lot of anxiety I think, still, and a real sense of uncertainty about what Emmanuel Macron does. He's managed to avoid, it seems so far from his polls are saying, a right-wing outcome to these elections, but he now has a completely different challenge to deal with, somehow forming some kind of way of dealing with and living with a modus vivendi with the left-wing end of French politics. So that is a challenge for him, but certainly for the people here, they feel that this is their night and things are moving in their direction, and they hope the country will continue heading in a left-wing direction. And they're hugely relieved, at least for now at least, and hoping the rest of the night is borne out by the initial promise of these exit polls.
Indeed, Dom. And as you say, we can see those extraordinary images there of celebrations. But let's go to the National Rally headquarters, which now feels very much like a wake. You can see there live shots of Marine Le Pen, who has arrived at the headquarters. It appears that she is talking to some press or the room. But as soon as she takes the stage, or if she takes the stage, we're assuming she will, we will be going to that live. But a very different mood there at the National Rally HQ. Adam Parsons was telling us that they were planning for celebrations. Jordan Bardella, the co-leader, protege of Marine Le Pen, was expecting to take the stage tonight and declare himself the potential prime minister. But actually, let's hear from the current prime minister, Gabriel Attal of France. He's speaking at the moment. Let's have a listen in.
Cette dissolution, je ne l'ai pas choisie, mais j'ai refusé de la subir. Et avec nos candidats Ensemble pour la République, nous avons décidé de nous battre.
Our candidates, we decided to fight. My commitment in this campaign was a responsibility. Right from the beginning of this campaign, I alerted on three risks. The risk of an absolute majority dominated by France Insoumise, and the risk of a majority by the National Rally, and also the risk of a movement that incarnates our ideas and values. These three risks were in fact set aside by the French people. This evening, there's no absolute majority that can be obtained by the extremes, and we owe this to this French spirit, which is so deeply attached to the Republic and to its values. And this evening, the political current that I represented during this election, that of the Republic and that of progress, that of authority and of work, that of the ecological transition and the European construction, is certainly alive and well. Thanks to our determination, thanks to the strength of our values, we were able to hold. We are upright, and we have 3 times more MPs than some of the polls said at the beginning of the campaign. Of course, I have a thought for all candidates who are representing the Republic, and also for those who sadly have lost this election. And I'm also thinking of those who decided to withdraw between the 2 rounds, and I'd like to thank each and every one of them, express my affection and my absolute loyalty. Ladies and gentlemen, to be Prime Minister is the greatest honour of my life. Everywhere I've been, I was thrilled to meet you, to talk to you, to listen to you. Everything you told me made me think. and the links that we're able to establish were something extremely precious, and the political position that I represented in this campaign, even though we had 3 times better results than had been envisaged, doesn't mean that it's a majority. So faithful to the Republican tradition, I will actually withdraw tomorrow morning. I know that in the light of the tonight, French people are feeling a certain amount of uncertainty as far as the future is concerned, because there's no absolute majority. Our country has come across a political situation which has no precedent and is prepared to welcome the world in a few weeks' time. And of course, I will take on my responsibilities as long as necessary. And of course, it can't be, in fact, any other way. But I think about my duty, the respect for the sovereignty of the people. So that's the image that I have of my functions as a Prime Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, this evening, there's a new era. There's a new era as far as our nation is concerned. From tomorrow, the center of gravity of power will, because of the will of the French people, more than ever in the hands of Parliament, in the hands of the representatives of the nation, and so therefore in the hands of our citizens. Our responsibility is enormous, and I will never be able to accept that the political offer is in 3 blocks and that everyone wants the other 2 to disappear, because that's not what France is, and that does not represent the French people. And I will never accept, in particular this evening, where the extreme right is getting a historic score, that millions of our citizens should choose extremes. And to those French people, and I've always said this, and I reiterate this tonight, I respect each and every one of you, whatever your choice, because after all, there aren't a few categories of French people, those who are right and those who are wrong, those who will vote correctly and those who would vote badly. There are some lives that are more difficult than others, and it's those lives that we have to improve. And I will always have the same objectives: to unite, to act with a very clear method, never to betray our values, never to ally ourselves with those with whom we don't share anything. A new era is also beginning for the values that our candidates incarnated, and we're going to have to invent something new, something major, something useful. And we'll have to question everything again. And from tomorrow, our political space is going to have to work to try to have a new political choice and to think above all about French people, their lives, and once again to incarnate hope for them with clear values, guarantee union and never give in to division, to incarnate authority but at the same time preserving our humanity, to act as far as security is concerned, to be on the side of those who believe in France, always, and on the side of our compatriots, without fail, in this adventure, which is in fact to take on our ideals. I know that we're going to be able to have the support of millions of people who don't want our values to disappear, and I know that I can count on our newly appointed MPs and to see to what extent we have to change, to really try to take into consideration the expectations. We are not going to be prepared to accept the extremists and to allow the country to tear itself apart. We're always going to try to pacify, faced with those that want spirits to go into flame and to act as polemicists, populists. We must always try to really take into consideration the expectations of French people. We will always be loyal to our values. My dear compatriots, so let's show the strength and the grandeur of our country. Let's show everything that France is capable of. And let's show that we're ready to rebuild everything again, because after all, we are France and nothing can resist to the French people. Thank you so much.
You were listening there to Prime Minister Gabriel Attal. He's just offered his resignation to President Macron. Quite a dramatic moment there. And the French President, Emmanuel Macron, said that, well, his office rather has said that he is analysing the exit poll and will wait for the full picture to emerge in Parliament before taking the necessary next decisions and that's according to his office. They've said, well, the French presidency has released a statement saying the president, as guarantor of our institutions, will respect the choice of the French people, meaning whether or not he will accept the resignation of Gabriel Attal, who has just said that he will offer it to the French president perhaps tomorrow as these dramatic events take place. And that dramatic result is revealed over an hour ago, where we saw that leftist alliance take the lead. Well, joining us now is Francois-Joseph Chichand, former French diplomat and political advisor to the French ambassador in the UK. Thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. Some dramatic moments there, listening there to Gabriel Attal offering his resignation. I guess he had very little choice. You know, we are yet to see how things unfold with the far left, but that's expected.
Yes, that's the way institutions in France works. After defeat at the election, the Prime Minister offers his resignation. But I assume he will probably carry on for some time, because putting together a government from the picture of the parliament that we have tonight is going to be extremely difficult and extremely long. We have essentially a 3 blocks parliament. And the far right and the far left still represent between 1/3 and 40% of the parliament. So it's going to be a very, very difficult parliament to handle. And the negotiations to put together a coalition are going to be difficult and long. And I think one of the key issues will be the budget, because that will be the big first test of the new government in the autumn. And that's going to be a big, big challenge to bring together all of these political forces from the left all the way to the right to try to form a government out of this very, very divided parliament.
For the past few weeks, our audiences have become familiar with what the National Rally stands for and what the far right here in France believes, what their policies are. But help us understand, I know that there is a number of different groups part of this coalition, but essentially, what are their values and beliefs?
So the value and the belief of the National Rally is really all about, you know, the focus on sovereignty, of like a little bit of nationalism as well. They are also quite opposed to European integration, and this is actually one of the main elements that differentiate them from other political parties in France. But what I would say is, you know, beyond the ideology, what they have also struggled to do throughout the campaign is to actually put forward a credible policy platform.
But what about the far left?
Yeah.
Because, you know, we're hearing a lot about Jean-Luc Mélenchon hating Emmanuel Macron hating him and hating Le Pen. Yeah. This is going to be a very tricky situation when we think about what the far left actually believes in.
Yes, I agree. I think the far left is they are going to try to put the far left aside from the negotiation of the new parliament, or the new government, if the numbers allow Emmanuel Macron to do that. Because there is, again, quite a huge divide between what the far left believes and the rest of the political forces that could form a government. And Mélenchon has been quite a difficult figure throughout the campaign. Even his allies inside this left-wing, far-left coalition have said he can't be prime minister because he's such a dividing figure. So I assume that the far left is going to clash quite heavily with the rest of the political spectrum in the negotiations that open now to try to form a government.
And of course, Mélenchon has been accused of making anti-Semitic remarks as well, for example, which will be tricky to balance for Emmanuel Macron.
Yes, absolutely. If there would be a comparison with the UK, Mélenchon is sort of like a Corbyn figure, if you will. Very, very powerful in his own camp, but he has difficulties to bring support outside his own sort of political party. But yes, the divide between him and Macron is extremely deep, and this is why I don't think it will be part of any negotiation to form a government. And the socialist parties, the ecologists, who apparently have done quite well during these elections, they will try to push Mélenchon aside to form the new government. But again, we have to see how what the final results are.
We're basing this conversation on exit polls that came out about an hour or so ago, and we will have to see how things unfold. What this coalition actually means of the leftist alliance, who has how many seats, and who has the majority even within that coalition.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yes, and I think this is the key tasks of the days and I think weeks ahead to try to find a common policy platform for for all of these political parties. And I'm sure discussions are starting right now. And by the way, this I think gives Macron a little bit more influence and power because the president gets to choose the prime minister, and I think he will have a role in brokering the talks between the various political parties to try to find common ground on policy and also common ground on who is going to be the ministers and who, most importantly, is going to be the prime minister.
Yeah, I mean, quite a tricky situation for him as well, because he may feel like he's taken France off the cliff edge with the far right, but he has his own set of problems with the far left, for example.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, let's remember as well, this is a defeat for Macron. His political party before the election had around 250 seats, and according to the exit polls, he might have between 100 and 120 seats. So his numbers have halved in parliament. And it's a new era in French politics because, it's the end of Macronism, effectively. These political platforms that he put together in 2017, which was designed to offer the electorate an alternative to the far left and to the far right. And look at today, both the far left and the far right are extremely, powerful in the new parliament. So,
and in many ways have weakened Emmanuel Macron and sent a warning shot to him as well. Thank you so much, Francois-Joseph Chouchan, for joining us here on the programme. Well, extraordinary scenes across Paris this evening. You're looking at some of those, or you were looking at some of those live images of protesters who had gathered. Those protests have turned to celebration, but there are police everywhere, riot police everywhere. Even here where I am, they've gathered in their thousands. About 30,000 riot police believed to be spread across the country after concerns that things may escalate, and about 5,000 of them in and around the suburbs of Paris. But we aren't seeing any real sort of violence as yet. You're watching Sky News. We've got lots more coming up in the next few minutes. Hello and welcome back to this special edition of Sky News, live here from Paris as we watch the results of the French election unfold. And what an extraordinary night it has been, certainly for the leftist alliance, and more or less a shock, stunned situation for the National Rally, who were expecting to come out on top. And that situation has been reversed. We have been speaking to a range of guests here this evening in Paris. But joining us now is Arnaud Dacier, former candidate for the Republicans' National Rally in Paris. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here this evening. You were knocked out of the first round, last week. But were you expecting this result for the National Rally today?
The polls were saying something else, obviously. So no, it's a little bit of a surprise. We probably knew that we will not have a majority. So it's just a difference in the number of seats, but the situation is quite the same that the one that the polls were saying.
What is your feeling and the feeling of your party this evening? We've been seeing those images coming out of the headquarters.
I think there is a little bit of disappointment, but there is a great hope for the future, because the number of votes that were gathered are way above what they were 2 years ago. And so I think there is a huge dynamic that is not translated into seats because of political games, of withdrawals, and people who voted for each other even though they have nothing in common. And so I think it's a beginning of something. And I think I'm very optimistic for the next elections, wherever they comes in 1 year or 3 years from now.
But do you think this is France sending the far right a clear message that they have historical memory and they don't want the far right governing this country?
It's a message coming from one part of the population, but there is another very strong message from the other part of the population, which is we want these ideas to come into power to solve issues like immigration, insecurity, debt and deficits of public spendings. So, there is a growing concerns on both sides, and I think there is a polarization, obviously, of politics in France. But I think it's normal because France is facing huge problems, and you have two different visions how to solve these problems. The problem is more on the side of my party, the Republicans, where they should have chosen to make an alliance with the National Rally, and they didn't. And I think it's a huge problem for them.
Do you think that they will now consider this?
I think they should, because otherwise they will, not be able to come back to power and to solve France issues. So I think they have a huge responsibility now, because doing what they do, the only results is that we will have a left or even more a leftist government in France, and that's not what they want.
But here we are tonight. How do you see things unfolding? Because there is a huge level of uncertainty about how this government will form, how it will come together and how it will work with President Macron.
You were asking me how I'm feeling tonight, and the biggest feeling I have is to be worried. I'm worried for my country, because there is a period of instability and uncertainty that is opening now. Nobody knows what coalition will be formed. Nobody knows which prime minister. And more than that, nobody knows what is the project that this coalition will be able to propose. Because the people, they didn't have the opportunity to have a public debate about it. They didn't choose a positive project. They chose to oppose. And to oppose is not a project. And that's coming at the worst moment for France, because France has huge problems to solve, like debt. And I think this instability and uncertainty is the worst thing, especially for the international markets, because they don't know if France will be able to face the huge debt, public debt that the country has. And it's a big worrying problem for me and for the country.
Arnaud Dacier, I'm going to keep you there for a second and bring in my colleague Dominique Waghorn, who also joins us here in Paris. And Dom, it's about 9:40 in the evening. We're seeing those images of riot police in the streets. There are thousands of riot police in and around the suburbs of Paris, and frankly, tens of thousands across this country, concerned that this, despite the results, which we saw there with you, celebrations, but things could escalate quickly here.
Yeah, there's been a huge police presence here, but also across the country, as you say. Thousands of police out of the streets patrolling the Place de la République. Unusually, they normally stay in the wings, but there have been lines and lines of police vans on the streets coming into this part of Paris, but also where you are on the Eiffel Tower and around the Bastille. I think the fear was that a far-right outright victory in this election could have seen a repeat or even worse of what we saw in the first stage of that parliamentary election, when the far right seized that unexpected victory over everyone else, and we saw rioting and unrest in the streets of Paris. I think it's less likely tonight because things are moving in the direction of the way I think a lot of, or the majority of Parisians wanted them to. The far right national rally is not as successful and not as popular in the French capital as it is across the rest of the country, and so I think the mood here is going to be just one of celebration, although I'm sure the police will leave nothing to chance, and it is still a volatile, febrile atmosphere across the political arena in France, and therefore that could translate into tension, unrest and volatility on the streets as well. But for now, at least, the mood here, certainly, and I think this is the heart of the celebrations really, is just one of euphoria and exaltation. The monument here adorned with the tricolour. We've seen a juggler juggling with flaming batons, loud cheers from the crowd as he was doing that. All the colours there of the various parts of the left-wing coalition that has done so well, it seems, in the exit polls at least of this election. Let's talk to Faye now. Faye, let's have a word with you. You were here when the exit polls announced that the left had done better than the far right. What was your mood when you heard that?
Everybody was screaming. Like, I was in the 19th arrondissement of Paris, and everybody was like cheering, like at a football game. Everybody was happy because like Paris is a cosmopolitan city, and we know that the far right is very dangerous for minorities, for LGBTQIA plus people, for women. So it was like there was so much relief because we believe in a France that is anti-racist, a France which stands for the weakest, a France that is multicultural, and we do not believe in a French. We do not think French is far right. Like it's at the opposite.
So relief and surprise. What were your worries though? What did you fear could happen today?
To be honest, it was like the mood, the atmosphere in France. For many years, it's been like difficult because we were seeing far right rising and rising and rising in the polls, and it seemed like it was inevitable that one day they will finally manage to go at the top of the government, you know. And you know, like TV channels in France, they're not partial. They're really supporting, in a way, the far right. So, to be honest, it's a surprise, but it's a super good surprise.
Big surprise for Emmanuel Macron as well. I've been hearing from experts and politicians on Sky News that he has a big challenge. Let's ask you, as an ordinary French voter, what should your president do now that this will change dramatically in these parliamentary elections?
I think he has to listen. You know, it's not the absolute majority that the left just won. So he has to stop being arrogant and finally listen to what people want. Like, they want better salaries, they want equality, they want a decent life. They want like free public school, free hospitals. They want to be able to finish the month. You know, he has to listen.
Great, thank you very much. We'll let you get back to your celebration.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Now we celebrate.
Yes, thank you very much. Have a good night. And a trolley of beer, I don't know if you can see that, Yalda, going behind. I mean, it is a real party atmosphere here, but one with a very serious message. Fen and thousands of others here are hoping that they can send to the Elysee Palace to Emmanuel Macron. And as you can hear, it's a deafening message here being sent from ordinary French voters here on the left of French politics, that they want the country to go in a very different direction to the direction they had feared was going to be taken by the far right. But a huge challenge, dodge the right-wing bullet, but now it's to grapple with a very different situation, a very different set of mathematics in the National Assembly. We're hearing from Adam earlier about the kind of mixture of fear and loathing in French politics. The huge fear about the direction the country could have gone under a National Rally party, a National Rally victory in Parliament, but also there is a sense of loathing amongst this coalition and the potential partners that has to deal with if it's going to form some kind of workable government. All the factions of French politics very much at loggerheads, at each other's throats, and I think the huge challenge that now faces the French president is how do you grapple with that and bring about out of this sort of hung parliament, this very messy, very French outcome so far, it seems, of these parliamentary elections, a parliament that can restore some kind of stability to French politics and restore a sense of trust, which is hugely absent in French politics, but also crucially a sense of real leadership. So a very big job ahead for the French president and his team with the outcome, it seems, of certainly the way these exit polls are indicating these elections are heading.
Dom, thank you, as always, for all of your coverage and analysis there. Let's bring in my guest who joins me here live, Arnaud Dacier, the former candidate for the Republicans' National Rally here in Paris. We're talking there about the emotions of tonight. We can see in the streets of Paris celebrations, and there were concerns around potential for riots. I mean, this remains a very divided, fractured nation tonight, despite the results that we're seeing.
Yeah, our voters, they never riot. It's only the left side who's rioting when they lose, because they have this special conception of democracy that they should always win. So I'm not very worried about tonight. I think they will celebrate their Pyrrhus victory, because to me it's a Pyrrhus victory. They can do nothing about this victory because they don't have a clear majority for a clear politics.
Do you think that the far right feels that this has been stolen from them?
Nothing is stolen. This is democracy. But clearly, it's not very healthy when the party who has gathered the most popular votes in the first round is finishing in the third position in seats. There is some kind of frustration there, because there is a majority of people who are willing, who voted for a policy that they will not get. If we were in England, the National Rally and the Republicans will have a crushing majority tonight, and I think that's good. This is good for democracy when the biggest party has the majority, because then you can have a clear policy that is implemented, and then it works or it doesn't work, but at least the country is functioning. And right now we will have a dysfunctional country, and that's very bad.
Arnaud Dacier, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. Well, you heard their concerns around the uncertainty, the dysfunction that could come out of this result, but certainly a sigh of relief from some quarters that they have prevented the National Rally, the far-right movement, from taking power here tonight. Lots more coverage coming up here on Sky News. We will continue to provide you with analysis of the results here. We'll leave you with these images. UK news coming up in the next few minutes. We'll be back at the top of the hour.
This is all about improving the care of children with cancer. And it's a study into a genetic test called whole genome sequencing, which is available to all children with cancer through the NHS England Genomics programme. Whole genome sequencing is special because rather than looking at just particular parts of a child's cancer genome, we're able to look at the entire readout of that child's cancer genome. This means that we get lots of useful additional information that we show throughout the study, but most importantly, it can also change the care that some children with cancer receive. So, for example, through knowing that a child has a less risky form of cancer, we can give them less intensive treatment and therefore give them less toxic side effects from intensive chemotherapy. Whole genome sequencing is really being proved as the gold standard genetic test for children with cancer. And you're totally right to point out that one of the things that we showed in this study is that whole genome sequencing can reproduce all the genetic tests that we currently do on children with cancer. So often throughout their treatment journey, we'll do a whole host of different targeted genetic tests. But what whole genome sequencing can do is, at the point of diagnosis, get all that information in one test, which is a more efficient way to do it, and also gives that additional information which can go on to improve the care that children receive. As well as looking at the cancer genome, and you're right to say that every single child's cancer genome is individual to that cancer, and we can see that when we do whole genome sequencing. We also look at the genome that the children have when they were born. And that means we can think, is it more likely that they were going to have cancer when they were born through their genetic code? And therefore, for that child and also their family, as you rightly bring up, do we need to monitor that child and that family so we can better intervene or treat them if we need to? So as well as giving that cancer information, it also gives that information about the genome that the child inherited from their family and may also be shared with other family members, which, as you say, can be a real concern.
Good evening. New Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has been in Edinburgh, where he greeted the Scottish Labour leader in front of a small crowd of supporters. It's his first visit as part of a nationwide tour since his party's landslide victory. He says there's nothing inevitable about the election win, insisting that Labour won because they campaigned for change.
There's nothing inevitable about an election win. There's nothing inevitable about what happened here in Scotland. We won because we changed the Labour Party. We won because we campaigned as changed Labour. We won because Anas and Jackie and all of you changed Scottish Labour and put it in a position to win that election. And we will govern as changed Labour with the same mindset, the same ethos. And yes, this is part one. Part two comes in 2026. And imagine what we could do, what more we could do. But we start the delivery now. Because that mandate that we won on Thursday was a very clear mandate for change across Scotland, across the whole of the United Kingdom.
Meanwhile, the new Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has unveiled more detail on the government's plans to tackle small boat crossings. She's announced plans to appoint a new border security commander and says the government will introduce new counter-terror-style powers to crack down on organised immigration crime.
Well, the Prime Minister has obviously set out the position on the Rwanda scheme, whereas we know the Conservatives ran this scheme for 2.5 years and sent simply 4 volunteers, as well as hundreds of millions of pounds. I will be auditing all of the details around the money and the legislation and the processes, and I will set out more details to Parliament. But the first step in our approach to all of these issues is to make sure we are putting the money instead into boosting our border security, and that is why we are today launching the Border Security Command process to make sure that we can get the new commander and new cross-border police in place in order to strengthen Britain's border security.
The former Conservative Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi says it's time for the party to regroup after losing the election. But who will be first to throw their hat into the ring to replace Rishi Sunak as leader? Here's our political correspondent, Dan McCaffrey.
This has been a very difficult night.
The Conservative Party has let you down.
The scale of our crushing defeat.
There aren't many things Conservatives have agreed on recently, but the scale and scope of the defeat on Thursday is forcing the party to face some hard truths. Not least of all, who will lead them in opposition.
Whoever comes forward, they come forward with a plan of how to unite the party, bring us back together. As I say, I think the biggest challenge for us is unity. And I think the lesson, if we haven't learnt it yet, then we really will be in trouble, is that we have to present a united front to the country.
This weekend, no one has formally declared, but it is becoming increasingly clear who might run, even if they aren't quite saying it.
My absolute focus at the moment, and the reason I came on today, was genuinely not to talk about leadership, because this is not the moment for this.
I honestly don't think that 3 days on from a general election in which we've just lost so many of our friends and colleagues, that it is right to have self-indulgent conversations like this.
And the former Home Secretary Suella Braverman, who's almost certain to run, didn't hold back in the Sunday Telegraph, describing the campaign as an idiotic strategy, that voters aren't mugs, we failed in office and deserve this result. For the Conservatives, there are no easy answers. There are largely two camps: those who want to tack to the right and see reform as a bigger threat, and those who want a more centrist approach to take on the Lib Dems and Labour. And then there are those, including Marcus Fish, who lost his seat, who want a more radical approach.
If it was me in charge, I would just dissolve the party and I would start something fresh.
Let's be clear about this. You want to destroy the current Conservative Party as it is?
Yes, I think it needs to be dissolved as an entity, and I think a new party needs to phoenix out of its ashes.
MPs return to Westminster on Tuesday, and for the Conservatives, it's not just going to be a battle over who leads the party, but a battle over the process too, with some arguing that it needs to be sorted soon, by the end of the summer, others suggesting that the Conservatives need time to think and that it should ultimately be put off until the autumn. Whatever they decide, candidates will start to formally declare soon, and debates will be had. But the fear for the Conservatives is, rather than healing divisions, this leadership campaign will only divide them further. Darren McCaffrey, Sky News, Westminster.
Let's take a look at the weather for you now. Well, the outlook remains cool and changeable into next week, with further showers or longer spells of rain. It'll be largely fine this evening, but there'll be a scattering of showers with thundery downpours possible. They will ease and fade overnight to leave most places dry and clear, but patchy rain will reach southwest England later. It'll turn quite chilly for July, especially in rural spots, with a few fog patches forming after a mostly sunny start tomorrow. This is Sky News. Coming up, more live from Paris as the French election results come in.
I hope you've enjoyed this so far, what is going on in France. We'll be back again. Have a wonderful night, a wonderful evening, a wonderful morning, wherever you're watching from. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, click the notification button so when we're on, you will be notified. God bless you. I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful Sunday and you have a wonderful week. God bless.